It is the 89th minute in a city of red and black, and the sky above the stadium feels like velvet drawn tight across a drum. The lights lean down like patient stars. People do not speak, they breathe. Boots tremble on fresh grass, and somewhere a heart decides to believe just a little longer. In that hush, a pass rolls across the lawn as gentle as a good night, and you think, if the ball understands love, it understands this. Remember this stillness. We will come back to it. There is a door that every dream opens eventually. The door to the beginning. Long before metal gates and cameras, before names heavy enough to tilt history, there was a small room where a handful of men talked about a club they wanted to build from their own lives. They were cold, probably. They were certain, definitely. They chose red and black the way you choose breath at birth, red for the flame inside, black for the night it glows against. Someone imagined a team of devils, but not devils of malice, devils of appetite for the ball and all its secret languages. The city with its needle tower cathedral and streets that smell of rain and espresso watched a seed go into the ground. And the seed learned to sing. In those early days, football was closer to the earth. The kit stuck to your back, and joy had to be earned one lungful at a time. Men stitched the first badges, mothers washed the first shirts, and children learned the first chant before they learned the rules. Rules came later, as they always do. The feeling came first. If you stood at the touchline then, you would hear a modest clatter of boots, the polite thunder of a future still shy about its voice. And in that shyness, Milan began to understand itself. A team that refused to look away from the horizon. Time rolls like a deep river. A stadium rose, concrete and iron, a bowl for the city's breath. It would be shared like some homes are, with another tribe in the same colors inverted. A twin you compete with and need. A mirror that argues back. Siblings, you might say, who borrow your jacket, your stadium, your sleep. But rivalry is a kind of love that doesn't admit itself. It sharpens you. It tells you, be more. The decades unfolded. The badge collected names the way night gathers stars. Baresi like a lighthouse, Maldini like a fact of nature. Captains whose armbands felt sewn into the city's skin. And there were artists. Number 10s who painted with their ankles. Midfielders who were metronomes with heartbeats. Forwards who kissed the net the way you kiss a letter before sending it. Titles came, cups rose. But in the quiet after celebrations, the club learned something larger than silver. That it belonged to those who waited at gates, sang in winter, and believed through summers that refused to end. There were seasons when everything clicked like a well-kept watch. You know the ones. The ball was a willing conspirator. Triangles traced themselves, and the pitch felt smaller because the team felt larger. Coaches stood at the edge with hands in pockets, pretending calm, offering little nods that meant everything. And there were seasons that taught humility, when defeats arrived with lessons folded neatly inside like letters from an honest friend. You learned to carry both. The cup in one hand, the memory of a missed tackle in the other. You learn balance. You learn grace. Somewhere in those years, the Champions League turned into a recurring dream. The kind you return to even when it hurts, because it hurts beautifully. Nights when Europe heard Milano sing in multiple languages at once. Italian in the lungs, hope in the bones, gratitude in the eyes. And at the final whistle of certain finals, some won, one lost in a storm of disbelief, another reclaimed with a stubborn smile. The club discovered that glory is not a photograph. It is a pilgrimage. You carry the road as much as the destination. Picture a training ground at dawn. The dew is a thin lace over the grass. A teenager pulls his laces tight and looks at the main pitch as if it were the moon. Does he know the number on his back will one day make a child, on the other side of the world, feel less alone? Not yet. He just knows he wants the ball to listen to him. A veteran walks by, placing a hand on his shoulder, passing down a recipe written in sweat and patience. The boy nods. Then the ball is rolling, and the day begins. Milan has always been a conversation between elegance and iron. The defenders, with their gazes like closed doors. The midfielders, measuring the world in touches. The forwards, impatient poets chasing the last line of a stanza. When the band plays, it sounds like this. A tackle that says no, a pass that says wait, a run that says now, and a finish that says thank you. The crowd answers, first with silence, then with the bright sound of belief. There is a derby that splits the city and stitches it back together in the same 90 minutes. It is an argument the city cherishes, like siblings bickering over who gets the window seat on a train headed toward memory. On those nights, scarves rise like constellations you can hold, and an old man might tell a child, if you listen closely, you can hear the past warming its hands. The child listens, and maybe they hear something. A chant that began before their parents were born. A promise spoken in vowels that vibrate the ribs. There were thinkers on the bench. Revolutionaries who believed football could be geometry sung in a choir, or jazz played with a conductor's baton. They taught pressing like shared responsibility, lines kept high like courage, and defending not as an apology but as an art. Imagine diagrams trembling into life, arrows turning into runs, zones turning into trust. If philosophy can wear boots, it did here. But for every theory, there is a quiet moment. A captain standing alone in the center circle after a loss, hands on hips, inhaling the empty air and exhaling the weight that cannot be shared. He looks at the badge and says nothing, because the badge has already heard him. And in that silence, the club becomes not a brand or a business, but a sanctuary for all the times you tried and almost failed and learned, returned, and finally found. Think of the city again. The Duomo like a hymn carved in stone. Trams muttering down their tracks. Fashion windows reflecting seasons. Milan is a place that understands silhouette. And AC Milan is its walking silhouette. Red slashing black the way the sunset slices the evening. In cafes, you hear names like old songs. People lower their voices when they say Paolo, as if speaking of weather that always returns. They smile when they remember a striker's sprint, a playmaker's glance, a goalkeeper's hand that seemed to grow mid-air. Memory is communal here. It passes sugar as well as stories. Some nights are candlelit even under floodlights. Nights when a free kick curls like a handwritten letter. When a through ball becomes a key you didn't know you were carrying. When a sliding tackle feels like someone closing a door before the winter gets in. And when the final whistle arrives, it doesn't slam. It sighs. People rise slowly, putting their arms through coats like they are returning to the ordinary world from a pilgrimage. Beads of rosary replaced by the rhythm of chants still looping under the skin. There is a stand in the stadium where songs are born with their boots on. The curva that sings through rain and dry throats. Bargain mornings and gilded nights. They do not audition hope, they deliver it. Flags slap the air. Drums write the first draft of the night. And down there, on the green, a left back tucks in at the perfect angle. A center half glances to confirm he is part oak tree, part compass. And a regista strokes the ball until it confesses where it wants to go. You can call it tactics if you like. The heart calls it belonging. Belonging stretches across oceans. A child in Tokyo. A nurse in Nairobi. A baker in Buenos Aires. A student in Jakarta. An insomniac in Toronto. Each of them tying the same knot of scarf. Each of them learning that red and black feels like a promise. Not that life will be easy, but that it will be worth standing for. They watch in different time zones, but they dream in the same one. And when the team scores, they startle their neighborhoods with joy shaped like laughter that did not ask permission. Of course, the road is not a straight line. There are years when silver turns its face away. You can feel the club walk through fog. Uncertain footing. Heavy breath. Footsteps that do not echo. But fog has a habit of teaching you where you are, by showing you what you miss. And when the air clears, you cherish the horizon instead of assuming it. In those return to form seasons, the grass looks greener not because it changed, but because you did. Let's visit a particular night of redemption. A striker, not the tallest but somehow the biggest, moves like he knows the net remembers his name. A midfielder with a beard that suggests wisdom beyond his years points to space as if conducting weather. A fullback sprints until the camera cannot keep up. The whistle goes and the team collects around each other, not as conquering heroes but as men who understand the privilege of a shared task. They do not lift only a trophy. They lift the people who stayed. The club's museum is a church where glass holds sermons. Shirts hang like prayers, numbers glow, 3, 6, 10, 21, and each thread seems to hum with a familiar past. You notice how the mannequins are still, but the air around them is not. Because every artifact is a doorway to the noise and scent and pulse of a match you cannot re-enter but cannot forget. You touch the glass and the past touches back. In the dressing room after a win, there is laughter that doesn't need jokes. Tape comes off like the day shedding its armor. Water bottles squeak, boots exhale. A coach speaks softly, "Well done, rest, enjoy, we go again." After a loss, the same room is a library. Words are expensive. The captain spends most of them. And then someone breaks the silence by saying, "We are not lost. We are learning the way." Heads lift. The work resumes. People ask what makes Milan Milan. Is it the titles? The enemies who sharpened them? The coaches who argued with the air until the air agreed? The jackets, perhaps? But truth sits closer to the heart. Milan is a collection of nights where strangers became a single song. It's the image of a boy seeing his surname above a number and realizing he has been adopted by a past that expects him to be brave. It's a city walking together, even when it pretends to argue. There is a story about a father and child. It happens in many languages at once. The father points at the pitch and says, "There." The child asks, "Where?" The father says, "There." Watch how the team moves as one body. The child watches a triangle appear like a smile. The father says, "That's trust." The child says, "That's magic." They are both right. Years later, the child returns with a friend and points at the same grass and says, "There." We said we would return to the 89th minute. Here we are again. The pass is still rolling. The stadium is a held breath. A midfielder checks over his shoulder and decides to be brave. A forward drifts between defenders like a thought that refuses to be ignored. The ball arrives and leaves in a single syllable, a touch cushioned like a promise kept, a finish guided rather than struck. The net nods yes. Time remembers to move again. But listen, this is the quiet after. This is the part I love. The embrace at the corner flag that is half relief, half gratitude. The closing sequence of passes as the team walks the ball home. The whistle that doesn't bite but blesses. And then the wave to the people who stayed until the last vowel of the last chant, because they always do. Palms to palms, a simple rhythm that says, "We saw each other tonight." Walk with me down the tunnel once more. The paint on the wall is nicked by years of shoulders. There's a smell of grass and rubber and a little history. You step into the night air, colder than you expected, and the city seems to have waited too. You realize that what makes a club eternal is not only winning, but the thousands of tiny rituals that strangers perform together until they are strangers no longer. Tying scarves, choosing the same seat, touching the same gate, whispering the same hope. Milan remains a place where football is the most beautiful excuse to talk about love. Love of craft, the way a center half opens his hips, the way a fullback knows when not to go, the way a keeper chooses a still moment before a storming save. Love of community, the way a cafe owner wipes a table and says, "Did you see the second goal?" as if discussing a sunrise. Love of memory, the names we pass down like heirlooms, stories polished every time they are told. This is what the red and black protect.